A poem from what is now this country praises a man for his valor and for his virtues more, and commands him to proceed with virtue on thy side. That poem invokes a celestial choir and is addressed to one of this country's leaders. A poet from what is now this country described being wakened with thundering noise by a fire that burnt down her house. A collection by that poet calls her the 10th muse lately sprung up in this country. For 10 points, name this home country of Anne Bradstreet and Phyllis Wheatley, the latter of whom addressed a poem to His Excellency General Washington. And the answer is the United States of America. A character created by this author tells his grandson a story about a group of hens who peck a fox nearly to death to protect their nest. In another novel by this author, the title character is conceived when Consuelo sleeps with a gardener who is dying of a snake bite. A novel by this author begins with a girl writing "Barabbas came to us by the sea" in her journal. In that novel by this author, Rosa's death by poison causes Clara to stop speaking for 9 years until she meets Esteban Trueba. For 10 points, name this author of Eva Luna and The House of the Spirits, a Chilean novelist. And the answer is Isabel Allende. This author wrote about Cudjoe Lewis's experience in the transatlantic slave trade in the posthumously published novel Barracoon. Alice Walker described a search for this author's unmarked grave in the Miss magazine article looking for this author. One of this author's characters experiences a sexual awakening under a pear tree before her grandmother sets her up with Logan Killix. That character is later forced to shoot her husband Tea Cake during a hurricane after he contracts rabies. For 10 points, name this author who described Janie Crawford's life in Eatonville in her novel Their Eyes Were Watching God. And the answer is Zora Neale Hurston. In this novel, the beautiful shepherdess Marcella explains that she had no obligation to love the late Grisostomo simply because he was in love with her. In this novel, a man gets sick from drinking a magical healing balsam not long after being tossed up and down in a blanket. The title character of this novel attacks a barber because he thinks his basin is the helmet of Mabrino. A priest and a barber burn the library of chivalric romances owned by this novel's title character, who dedicates his adventures to his lady Dulcinea. For 10 points, name this novel in which the title Caballero Andante attacks windmills alongside his squire Sancho Panza by Miguel de Cervantes. And the answer is Don Quixote. Thomas McCulkey wrote that a single shelf of good European library is worth as much as the entirety of this country's literature in a minute on this country's education. A poet from this country described a place where the mind is without fear. That poet from this country wrote a song beginning, "Thou art the ruler of the minds of all people." A poem beginning, "Thou hast made me endless, such is thy pleasure," is the first poem in a collection from this country whose title translates to song offerings. The author of Gitanjali was from, for 10 points, what home country of Rabindranath Tagore, who wrote its national anthem, Jana Gana Mana, in Bengali? And the answer is India. In this novel, a 107-year-old brothel owner asserts, "It is better to live on one's feet than die on one's knees." This novel opens with the line, "It was love at first sight," in reference to a character's admiration of a chaplain. A character in this novel paradoxically manages to make a profit by buying eggs for 7 cents each and then selling them for 5. In this novel, a part-time accomplice of Milo Minderbinder is frustrated by an absurd rule which makes it impossible to be discharged from flying bombing missions. For 10 points, name this novel about Yossarian's attempts to avoid dying in World War II by Joseph Heller. And the answer is Catch-22. A character in this play says that she never had talked seriously with her husband despite being married to him for 8 years. That character in this play is called a little skylark by her husband, who bars her from buying macaroons. A man with tuberculosis of the spine watches a character in this play rehearse the tarantella. In this play, a letter marked with a black cross signifies the impending death by syphilis of Dr. Rank. A woman is blackmailed by Krogstad after she forgets her father's signature on a loan in this play, which ends with its title character slamming the door on her husband Torvald. For 10 points, name this play about Nora Helmer by Henrik Ibsen. And the answer is A Doll's House. In this play, a character delivers a speech discussing the public works of Puncher and Watman. That character from this play performs a dance in which he acts as if he is entangled in a net. Characters in this play repeatedly observe that there is nothing to be done. A man in this play excitedly notes that he would get an erection if he hangs himself from a nearby tree, which is this play's only set decoration. In this play, a slave puts on a bowler hat before delivering a nonsensical monologue. That slave, Lucky, is controlled by Pozo. For 10 points, Vladimir and Estragon do nothing in what play by Samuel Beckett, in which the title character never actually arrives. And the answer is Waiting for Godot. In one poem about this event, the speaker notes, "Hope flounders in mud. Before praying, make it stop." In another poem set during this event, a man shouts, "Oh Christ, they're coming at us." A poem set during this event describes the froth-corrupted lungs of a man with a hanging face like a devil's sick of sin. The poem's attack and counterattack are set during this war, as is a poem that describes an ecstasy of fumbling. That poem condemns the old lie told to children ardent for some desperate glory, dulce et decorum est, pro patria mori. For 10 points, name this war, described in poems by Siegfried Sassoon and Wilfred Owen. And the answer is World War I. A character from a story by this author calls himself a creature driven and derided by vanity. That character is given a florin by his uncle to buy something for Mangan's sister at the title bazaar. In another story by this author, Bartel D'Arcy sings The Loss of Aughrim at a party, leading Gabriel Conroy to contemplate his wife's life while snow falls on the grave of her dead lover, Michael Fury. In a novel by this author, the phrase, "Yes, I said yes, I will yes," concludes a long stream of consciousness soliloquy by Molly Bloom. For 10 points, name this author who collected Araby and The Dead in Dubliners before writing A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man and Ulysses. And the answer is James Joyce.